discussion about how to overcome unhealthy, repetitive, and habitual behaviors in your life and your relationships that create unhealthy outcomes in your life and your relationships. In part one of this discussion, we identified the root causes of unhealthy, repetitive behavior. We talked about how we get stuck in it, and we talked about how to separate ourselves from the unhealthy beliefs that are creating it. And we're going to move forward in part two of this discussion about how we renovate our spiritual houses to create healthy outcomes and healthy relationships. Are you ready to go?
I am so ready to hear this part.
All right, here we go. Yes, and we can redecorate it.
Okay, so what does that look like?
So redecorating is purposely identifying the pictures on the wall of yourself that are so disturbing, taking them down purposely, and replacing them with something that brings beauty and health to your life and your relationships. And so it's a changing of the very defining of who you are. And this is so important because this is everybody's story.
Yeah.
This is everybody's story.
Yeah, I hope you guys hear that. We all are in the same struggle.
Right.
Yeah.
And so this happened with the first man and the first woman.
Mm-hmm.
So the story of Adam and Eve is so profound and important for us because it's the story that's been imparted to us. And we see this in every individual, the struggle. Now, the story of Adam and Eve is that they were created in the image of God. Mm-hmm. They were healthy. Mm-hmm. They had such value because they were made in the image of God, who's the value giver. Mm-hmm. So God is love, and love is the expression and giving of value. That's the best definition of love. So God is the value giver. So here they have the very nature and identity. They were created in the image of God, who is love and truth. And in comes the thing into their life and says to Eve, and see, God's a truth teller. So he tells them, if you eat from that tree, you will die. He's talking about spiritual death and physical death. So God tells them the truth. Don't eat from that tree. And so the serpent comes in, the thing, and says, did God really say that? Mm-hmm. So here he's questioning the serpent, the thing, is questioning the very character and identity of God. And then says this amazing thing, this amazing lie and deception. Oh, the reason God, now remember, God is walking with Adam and Eve in the garden. They know him.
Right.
And
Intimately.
And all his beauty and wonder and compassion and care. And he says, well, the reason God doesn't want you to eat from that is because you will become like him.
Which they already were, because they were in his image. Right. So he takes a grain of truth.
Yes.
Yeah.
Right. And so here they're already made in God's image. And he deceives them that they're not. Now, see, he's imparted a picture on the wall of Adam and Eve.
Of their minds.
Of their mind. A thought. A destructive, a really destructive thought. That God can't be trusted.
Right.
And I'm not already made in God's image. So what do Adam and Eve do? They exchange the image of God for the image of man. And the first thing they say is, oh, I'm naked.
I'm ashamed.
I'm naked and ashamed.
Yeah, I better hide.
I better hide.
Yeah. Does that not resonate with everyone?
And I better cover myself.
Right.
See?
Right. And hide from God.
Yes.
Yeah.
And cover myself.
Yeah.
And see, that's the cycle.
Yeah.
They lost the image of being a child of God that they were created in. Mm-hmm. And Scripture actually says later on that Adam had a son in his own image. Mm-hmm. So Adam's created in the image of God, but he actually imparts this to his son.
Yes.
And he has a son in Adam's own image.
Yes.
So he has imparted the thing.
The bad thing on the picture on the wall.
Right. The identity.
The identity.
The false identity.
The false identity.
To his son.
Which is now gone through every generation.
Yes.
Yeah, it's
Right.
why these stories are really important
Yes.
to understand the deeper meaning of what God was trying to impart to an ancient people.
Right.
Right? That they didn't have words to understand with. So yeah, okay, so great.
So let's try to use another example. Let's say you get cancer, right? Let's just use brain cancer. Let's say you get brain cancer, okay?
Okay.
If someone gets brain cancer, we see the symptoms of the cancer in their body. We'll see unhealth being exhibited in their body from the cancer. Now, could you imagine someone saying, oh no, the cancer is me, so I'm not going to get any help for it? So if we believe the cancer is us, you're not going to get any help, even though it's destroying your life. See, this is what the thing does. It convinces us that we are the thing.
And we have to, and a lot of times that you better protect it.
Right.
Right. The self-protection.
Yes.
Yeah.
And again, we're talking about a spiritual cancer that's been imparted through the ages that everybody struggles with.
Yes.
Everybody struggles with. So let's think about, do you have any other questions or thoughts on that?
Well, it's starting to, again, it's making more and more sense. It's just, I feel like where I get shaky is then, okay, so you're stepping back and saying, now I have the capacity to look at this without the shame, without the guilt, and take this picture down. But what is that? And you said, I know it's process, right? Nothing's one and done in the sense of these things are always through a process. Right. But I feel like I still don't have a handhold of like, what would that actually look like?
So let's go to the scriptures for this.
Okay.
Because the scriptures are ancient writings, and they were dealing with the same thing that you and I and everybody deals with, right? This things that are imparted into our identity that are destructive for us and our relationships, and that we can pass on unless we deal with them. So let's go to the scriptures. So Jesus in the book of Matthew says this amazing thing. He says, in order to gain your life, you must lose your life. Okay? And then we see in the book of Romans 6 and 7, we see the Apostle Paul. Okay, this is a man that Jesus appeared to him and transformed his life. We see him expressing his same struggle with this. So here it is, thousands of years before with Adam and Eve, and here it is now a couple thousand years after Adam and Eve, and the Apostle Paul is struggling with this very thing. And he says, in my heart, I want to do what's right and good. And he says, but there's another thing at work against me. And he cries out, and he says, what a wretched man I am. Now, he's not condemning himself with that. The word wretched there is, I am suffering.
Yeah, right.
I am suffering
under something.
Being torn between these two identities.
A pain.
Yes, I'm in horrible pain. And he says, so if in my mind I want to do what's right, but there's something working against me, it's no longer I that do it. It's the thing, right? It's the thing. And the thing is this imparted nature. It's an imparted spiritual cancer working against Paul. And then he cries out, who will save me from this? Right?
Yeah.
And this is the most important thing. Whether you are a religious person and have belief or not, one of the greatest deceptions is that I have the power to overcome the thing and to reject the things that have been imparted to me. That I have the power to do that. It's one of the greatest untruths. Because when we believe that, we simply reinforce the cycle of shame and our failures. Our first step is admitting I don't have the power to do that. So I recognize this cancer in me, and I realize I don't have the cancer. I don't have the power to put this cancer to death. Right? So, but the Bible tells us, and this is what Paul cries out, but he said, thanks be to God for the work that God has already done. Okay? Now, this is the work of Christ. Christ returned to conquer the thing, a condition called sin, right? Not a list of behaviors. It's a cancerous condition in our nature that's imparted to us called sin. And sin is the things that stops us from expressing the love of God and receiving this new identity, the restoration of our original identity we were created to have. That's what sin is. It's not a list of behaviors. It results in, it creates unhealthy, unloving behaviors, but it's not the causation of them. And so this is the beautiful thing. This is what Jesus came for. He didn't come to destroy us. He came to destroy the thing so that we would be freed from it. And then we could express the beautiful nature of God, which is love, which is the expression and the giving of value. And we can receive the love of God, the value of God, the inherent value that we have, not based on what we're trying to achieve, right? So this way to deal with this spiritually is to quit working harder, to quit striving so hard to overcome your behaviors and the thing, and receiving something that's already been done. And then Scripture talks about this beautiful way of dealing with it. And it says, so now, being empowered by receiving the grace of the Father, which breaks our shame and self-hatred.
And there's that off-ramp.
That's
that
the
you talked
off-ramp.
about.
Grace is the
Grace.
off-ramp.
Grace
Right.
is what breaks that
Yes.
endless cycle.
Right. The receiving of grace is the thing that separates us from the thing and our identity. The receiving of grace.
Okay, we need to say that again.
Right.
Grace
Right.
is what separates us
Yes.
from the thing.
Right. It's the receiving
It's
of
the receiving
grace.
of the grace.
Right.
Okay.
Right. And so it's the receiving of forgiveness for what's been imparted
Which is
to
so
us.
opposite
Yes.
of what we want to do to ourselves, right?
Right.
We want to beat ourselves
Right.
up and we feel like we deserve to be beaten and thrash ourselves over and over.
condemn ourselves.
And so it's literally the opposite of that.
Right.
It's accepting this grace, then to be able to break through and have God rip off this picture,
Right.
this old thing that's in our souls.
Right. And not only have God take it off, but receiving grace empowers us to separate
To separate
ourselves
ourselves
from
from
it.
it.
So that we are now empowered and have authority to redecorate our souls. Redecorate
Which is over
our
time.
identity.
Which
Yes,
goes over
it
time.
happens over time.
Yeah.
And the Bible describes us as like changing clothes. It's like taking off the old self, it says. So
Right.
that's the old unhealthy identity that's been imparted to us, and all the pictures of that on our walls. It's masquerading as us. So what we start to see with this is, oh, the skin I'm wearing, it's not my skin. And so this coat I'm wearing of identity that I'm hiding under, like Adam and Eve with the fig leaves, right? I'm hiding behind this coat. So like Adam and Eve, their false self was in hiding. And so I can take that off and I can put on this beautiful set of clothes that I was originally created to
To
wear,
be and wear.
and
Yeah.
to live in.
Yeah.
And that changes all the outcomes, because now I'm not this dirty, rotten sinner. I'm not the thing. I'm not the cancer. See? I am a child of God who's valued and loved because God has declared that over me.
Period.
This is why Jesus came, is to demonstrate the nature and the love and how much he loves people, which God is imparting his very identity and image in us as we receive the gift of his grace. So we need to quit striving and working so hard against it, because that just reinforces that we can't, and that creates even more shame and guilt. And so the off-ramp is receiving the gift of grace, which opens the door to self-love and having,
and receiving the love.
yes, and having grace for the self.
Yeah.
It's so incredibly
Powerful.
Right. So what I do is I hate the thing in me, but not myself. I put to death the thing in me. But if I'm not separated from it, what I'm constantly doing is trying to put myself to death. Because what I am is I'm attracted to the things and the people that reinforce the very cancer that I need to be set free from. When I'm set free from it, it radically changes my attractions, what I'm attracted to. See? And that changes everything. I don't have to make sacrifices anymore. I don't have to destroy myself anymore. See? And then I can become open. And I can actually bring my behaviors into the light, because I don't have to hide it anymore.
Right. Which is always, at least what I'm learning, is in the context of community, where you're able to actually talk about the things that, the behaviors. It's in that context of love that you get more and more free. It's the literal off-ramp is in grace of a community that kind of bears each other's burdens in that way. And you won't be in a community like that if you fear.
You get more and more isolated.
Yeah. Even you can be in a room, you can be with people all the time, but no one really understand or know you. Right. So, well, that's a lot, bud.
It is, but I want to address one more thing.
Okay.
Because this is the common critique of this. It's, well, aren't I just letting myself off the hook?
Sure. And
for all the negative things I deserve because of what I've done.
Yeah.
And the answer is absolutely. You're letting yourself off the hook for all the things that have been imparted to you. And that's why Jesus came and died. We're getting let off the hook and getting a new start of grace and love, right? Even if we fall back into those patterns, we're not stuck in that circle. We have an off-ramp, which is the grace and the love of God that's been demonstrated to us through Christ. So remember, Jesus says, I didn't come to condemn the world,
but to save it.
I came to save it and set the captives free.
Right. And heal the brokenhearted.
Yes.
And why are we brokenhearted? Because we have this horrible picture on the walls of our soul.
And he came to give us abundant life in abundance, right?
Yeah. I think the other argument to this is, oh, well, so you just saying just do whatever you want, and so what?
Right.
No, that's not what we're saying.
That's not what we're saying.
No.
We're saying deal with the real thing, though.
You're right. Right.
So that you're not caught in these non-loving, unhealthy behaviors.
Right.
Where you can actually get the core of what you need the most met in you, which is the answer to this question: am I valuable? That's the question everybody tries to answer.
That's the underlying.
Yes. Am I valuable?
Question. Right.
Now we can answer that because it's been imparted to us, because it's inherent in the way we were created. So every person's valuable, whether they're sitting in the gutter as a drug addict or they're the president of the United States. Every person's valuable.
It's valuable.
Right. And if we don't believe in imparted value, then we create idols and we earn value. Right. Which we know is a sham and a fake.
Right. Yeah. And a very thin veneer that shatters super easily
Right.
when you can't earn anymore.
Exactly.
Yeah. I learned that when I couldn't do anything for so long. I had to really rethink my whole idea of how valuable I was as I laid in a bed for so many months, that wait, I have to recognize that I'm still valuable, whether I do anything for anyone
When you were so
ever
ill.
again. Right. So yeah, I think that's the core underlying thing. Am I valuable? Am I valuable? Am I valuable?
So how about if we give a quick summary?
Great.
Okay. So again, when dealing with unhealthy, repetitive, and habitual behaviors, we're not just talking about addictions here. We're talking about how we manipulate and control, and we have really reactive behaviors that are destructive to our relationships. That's the most important thing. Destructive to our relationships with others and ourselves. So the first thing is to understand that the root cause of that are unhealthy beliefs. And again, these are identity beliefs. They're different from a belief, oh, this table is in front of me. They're so much deeper than that. These are the pictures that have been imparted to us and been hung on the walls of our soul and our mind and our very identity. Once we start to recognize that, we can start to confront the thoughts that the thing on our wall is imparting to us, these condemning, horrible thoughts about ourselves, creating shame and self-hatred. And it starts to change the things we're attracted to. And when we receive the power of grace through what Jesus has done, we actually put to death the cancer, the spiritual cancer in our identity that every person has to face from the beginning of time to now. It's an ancient thing, but it's still happening today. And every person born has had to struggle with that same thing. We can now start to confront that, separate ourselves from that, and understand that the thing is the causation. The thing imparted to us is the causation that I am a prisoner of. I'm not the creator of. I am the prisoner of. And this is what Jesus came to set us free from. And we can start to take off that ugly coat or that destructive picture, disturbing picture on our wall, however we want to see it. And we can start to redecorate it with the beautiful things that God has provided for us, which is an identity that's beautiful and made in the beautiful image of our loving Father in heaven.
Love it.
Love it.
So we would love to hear from all of you. If it stirs up questions, please feel free to comment, and we'd love to hear your thoughts. Thanks for joining us today. Hope it helps.